In the vast ocean of human existence, we find a fundamental truth that transcends cultures, religions, and eras: the transformative power of silence. This is not just the absence of sound, but a deep state of consciousness that connects us with our divine essence. On the spiritual journey, silence reveals itself as one of the greatest teachers, guardian of sacred secrets, and catalyst for internal transformations. Over time, great spiritual masters have always emphasized the importance of silence as a fundamental practice for inner development. This is not an empty silence, but a state filled with wisdom, insight, and power. It is in silence that we find the strength to protect our dreams, preserve our blessings, and cultivate our connection with the divine. Ancient wisdom teaches us that not everything we experience should be shared. There is a sacred art to knowing what to keep secret and what to reveal to the world. This is not a question of dissimulation or inauthenticity, but of deep understanding about the nature of spiritual energies and how they operate in our lives. When we begin to awaken to the spiritual dimension of existence, one of the first lessons we learn is the importance of discretion. Ancient sacred texts are full of examples where silence was fundamental for the manifestation of great divine purposes. This wisdom has not lost its relevance. On the contrary, it has become even more crucial in our era of oversharing and constant exposure. The spiritual journey is, essentially, a path of inner transformation. It is a process by which our consciousness expands, our perception refines, and our connection with the divine deepens. On this path, we learn that there is a fundamental difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge can be shared freely, but wisdom requires discernment in its transmission. In our contemporary society, where instant information sharing has become the norm, the practice of sacred silence may seem contradictory or even antiquated. However, it is precisely in this context that its importance becomes even more evident. Too much exposure can dilute the potency of our spiritual experiences and weaken the manifestation of our divine purposes. When we receive a vision or spiritual revelation, our first inclination may be to share it immediately. This impulse, while understandable, does not always serve the greater purpose of our journey. Just as a seed needs time in the dark of the earth to germinate, certain spiritual revelations need a period of gestation in the silence of our soul. Silence is not just an external practice, but an internal state of receptivity and discernment. It is in this state that we develop the ability to distinguish between what should be shared and what should be preserved. This distinction is not based on rigid roles, but on an intuitive understanding that develops through consistent spiritual practice. One of the most delicate areas in our spiritual journey concerns the dreams and visions we receive about our future. There is a natural temptation to share these revelations, especially when they fill us with excitement and hope. However, ancient wisdom teaches us that divine dreams are like delicate seeds that need to be protected until the appropriate time for their manifestation. When we keep our dreams silent, we are not only protecting them from external negative energies, but also creating a sacred space where they can grow and strengthen. Silence acts like a spiritual womb, nurturing our visions until they are mature enough to face the outside world. This principle applies not only to dreams and visions, but also to the material blessings we receive on our journey. Material prosperity, when part of the divine plan for our lives, must be administered with wisdom and discretion. Exhibitionism and ostentation not only attract negative energy, but they can also distract us from our greater spiritual purpose. True spiritual prosperity manifests itself naturally and harmoniously, without the need for external validation. When we learn to keep our blessings silent, we allow them to multiply according to the divine law of abundance. This is not a silence based on fear or scarcity, but on a deep understanding of how spiritual energies operate in our lives. In the context of relationships, silence also plays a crucial role. Family dynamics, especially, benefit greatly from the practice of sacred silence. Not all situations we face in our intimate relationships need to be exposed to the outside world. Silence, in this context, becomes an expression of love and protection. When we face challenges in our relationships, the modern tendency may be to seek validation and advice from social media or wider social circles. However, this exposure rarely contributes to effective problem solving. On the contrary, it can amplify conflicts and create additional obstacles to healing and reconciliation. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that there is an appropriate time for each revelation. Just as in nature there is a time to plant and a time to harvest, in our spiritual journey there are times to speak and times to be silent. Discernment between these moments is one of the marks of spiritual maturity. Mystical experiences and profound spiritual encounters are particularly sacred and often require silence. When we receive a vision, a revelation, or a transcendental experience, our first responsibility is to preserve it in our hearts. This period of silence allows the experience to sink deep into our soul and produce genuine transformation. Silence regarding spiritual experiences does not mean we should deny or suppress them. Rather, it is through silence that we allow these experiences to mature and fully integrate into our consciousness. There is a fundamental difference between sharing a spiritual experience out of divine guidance and sharing it out of a need for validation or recognition. On our journey of spiritual growth, we also learn about the importance of silence in relation to our daily spiritual practices. Prayer, meditation, and other sacred practices often produce more profound results when kept private. This principle is not based on secrecy, but on the understanding that certain spiritual experiences are intensely personal and intimate. Silence also proves to be a powerful tool in developing our intuition and spiritual discernment. When we learn to cultivate inner silence, our ability to perceive divine guidance expands significantly. This silence allows us to distinguish between the voice of the ego and the voice of inner wisdom. One of the areas where silence is particularly important is in the process of manifesting our divine purposes. When we receive a spiritual vision or calling, there is a period of preparation and maturation that must be respected. Premature sharing of our purposes can disperse the energy necessary for their manifestation. This principle especially applies to initial realizations in our spiritual journey. When we begin to experience successes and achievements, there may be a temptation to immediately proclaim them. However, ancient wisdom teaches us that early achievements are like delicate shoots that need protection to become firmly established. Silence regarding our achievements is not a denial of gratitude or a form of false modesty. Rather, it is an expression of deep understanding about how spiritual energies operate. When we keep our initial victories quiet, we allow them to take hold in deeper, more lasting ways. In the professional and financial context, silence also reveals itself as a practice of wisdom. When we receive promotions, opportunities, or financial increases, discretion can be our greatest ally. This does not mean that we should deny or hide our blessings, but rather manage them with wisdom and maturity. Material prosperity, when part of our spiritual path, must be treated with the same respect that we give to deeper spiritual experiences. Money and material resources are forms of energy that respond to the law of silence. When we learn to manage our finances discreetly, we create an environment conducive to their healthy multiplication. In our digital age, where constant sharing has become the norm, practicing silence can seem challenging. Social media and instant communication platforms create constant pressure to externalize every aspect of our lives. However, it is precisely in this context that silence becomes even more valuable. Silence regarding our spiritual experiences does not mean isolation or lack of communion. There is an appropriate time and place to share testimonies and experiences that can benefit others on their spiritual journey. The key is discernment, knowing what, when, and with whom to share. One of the most profound manifestations of spiritual silence is found in our response to challenges and adversity. When we face difficulties, the natural tendency may be to seek sympathy and support by constantly sharing our struggles. However, there is a special strength in facing certain battles in silence. This silence in the face of adversity does not mean denying the reality of our pain or refusing support when necessary. It is about recognizing that some battles are part of our spiritual growth process and need to be faced in the sacred silence of our soul. It is in this silence that we often find the answers and strength we seek. Silence also proves to be a powerful practice in the context of our community life and social relationships. Not all opinions need to be expressed, not all knowledge needs to be shared. There is a special wisdom in knowing when to remain silent, even when we have something to say. On our journey of spiritual growth, we also learn about the importance of silence in relation to our healing and inner transformation processes. When we go through deep emotional or spiritual healing processes, silence can be our greatest ally. This is not a silence of denial, but a sacred space where transformation can occur. Silence regarding our healing processes also protects us from energies that could interfere with our recovery. When we prematurely share our healing processes, we can inadvertently expose ourselves to opinions and energies that do not contribute to our recovery. One of the most delicate areas in our spiritual journey concerns the spiritual gifts and abilities we develop. When we begin to awaken gifts such as intuition, clairvoyance, or healing abilities, there is a natural temptation to share and demonstrate these abilities. However, ancient wisdom teaches us that spiritual gifts must initially be developed in silence. This principle is not based on secrecy, but on the understanding that spiritual gifts are sacred and need a protected environment to develop properly. Premature sharing of our spiritual capabilities can not only attract negative energies, but also create expectations and pressures that interfere with our natural development. Silence is also fundamental in the process of making important decisions in our lives. When we face meaningful choices, wisdom lies in seeking answers in the silence of our soul before seeking external opinions. This silence allows us to access our inner wisdom and receive clear divine guidance. In relation to our goals and aspirations, silence reveals itself as a practice of protection and strengthening. When we keep our goals silent, we create a protected energetic field where they can develop without interference. This is not a silence based on fear, but on understanding the spiritual laws of manifestation. Silence also plays a crucial role in our process of self-discovery and self-knowledge. Not all revelations we receive about ourselves need to be shared immediately. There is wisdom in allowing certain discoveries to mature within us before being expressed externally. On our spiritual journey, we also learn about the importance of silence in relation to our devotion and worship practices. The deepest experiences of connection with the divine often occur in the sacred silence of our soul. This silence is not empty, but filled with divine presence and spiritual communion. Silence also reveals itself as a fundamental practice in developing our compassion and empathy. When we learn to silence our judgments and opinions, we create space for a deeper understanding of others. This silence allows us to access deeper levels of love and understanding. When it comes to our romantic relationships and meaningful partnerships, silence also plays a crucial role. Not all aspects of our intimate relationships need to be exposed to the outside world. There is a special beauty and strength in keeping certain aspects of our relationships protected by sacred silence. Silence in our intimate relationships does not mean a lack of communication or transparency with our partner. Rather, it is about creating a sacred space where love can flourish protected from outside interference. This silence strengthens the bond between partners and allows the relationship to develop in a deeper and more authentic way. In relation to our life mission and spiritual purpose, silence proves to be a powerful protector. When we receive clarity about our mission, there is a natural tendency to want to share immediately. However, wisdom teaches us that certain aspects of our mission need to be kept silent until the appropriate time for their revelation. This principle does not suggest that we hide our light or deny our purpose. It is about understanding that there is a period of preparation and maturity that needs to be respected. Being silent about our mission allows us to develop the necessary qualities and skills without the pressure of external expectations. In the context of our daily spiritual practice, silence also manifests as an important teacher. The most profound transformations often occur in the silence of our regular practice, away from the eyes of the world. This silence allows us to develop a more authentic connection with our divine essence. The practice of silence does not mean isolation or alienation from the world. On the contrary, when practiced wisely, Silence allows us to engage with the world more consciously and effectively. It is in silence that we develop the clarity necessary to navigate the challenges of modern life without losing our spiritual centering. In relation to our learning and spiritual growth processes, silence also plays a fundamental role. Not all lessons we learn need to be immediately transformed into teachings for others. There is wisdom in allowing certain understandings to mature within us before being shared. Silence in our learning process does not mean we must become stagnant reservoirs of knowledge. It is about understanding that there is a time of assimilation and integration that needs to be respected. This silence allows us to transform knowledge into lived wisdom. In relation to our healing practices and energy work, silence proves to be a powerful ally. When we develop healing capabilities or work with subtle energies, discretion can significantly amplify the effectiveness of our work. Silence creates a protected energetic field where healing can occur more deeply. This principle does not suggest that we should deny or hide our healing abilities. It is about understanding that energy work is sacred and often more effective when carried out with discretion and humility. Silence allows us to channel healing energies in a purer and more focused way. In the context of our professional lives and careers, silence also shows itself as a practice of wisdom. When we receive divine guidance regarding professional changes or new ventures, there is a special strength in keeping these movements silent until the appropriate time for their manifestation. This silence regarding our professional movements does not mean that we must act secretively or dishonestly. It's about understanding that certain transitions and changes benefit from a period of silent gestation. This silence allows us to prepare the ground adequately without creating unnecessary resistance. In our practice of meditation and contemplation, silence reveals itself in its purest and most powerful form. It is in the deep silence of meditation that we find our true nature and connect with the infinite source of inner wisdom. This silence transcends the mere absence of sound, becoming a state of expanded consciousness. The regular practice of meditative silence helps us develop a quality of presence that permeates all aspects of our lives. The more familiar we become with inner silence, the more naturally we are able to discern when to speak and when to remain silent in our daily interactions. In the context of our family lives and close relationships, silence also manifests as a practice of love and protection. When we face family challenges, there is wisdom in processing them initially in the silence of our spiritual practice before seeking outside interventions. This silence regarding family matters does not mean denial or suppression of problems. It is about creating a sacred space where family dynamics can be transformed through the power of prayer and conscious intention before being exposed to external energies. In our interaction with social media and technology, silence becomes an increasingly crucial practice. In a world of constant sharing, the ability to remain silent about certain aspects of our lives becomes a form of energetic and spiritual protection. This digital silence does not mean that we should isolate ourselves or stop participating in online communities. It's about developing discernment about what to share and maintaining a deeper connection with our essence, regardless of the external validation of social media. In the context of our practice of manifestation in conscious creation, silence proves to be a powerful catalyst. When we keep our manifestation processes silent, we create a more focused and powerful energy field for realizing our desires aligned with divine purpose. This principle does not suggest that we should deny our creative abilities or hide our achievements. It is about understanding that manifestation processes are more effective when initially protected by silence, allowing energies to consolidate before external expression. In our practice of spiritual study and research, silence also plays a fundamental role. Not all insights and revelations we receive through study need to be immediately shared. There is wisdom in allowing certain understandings to mature in silence. This silence regarding our study does not mean that we must become passive repositories of knowledge. It is about understanding that true spiritual knowledge needs to first be integrated and experienced before it can be shared effectively. In the context of our practice of service and contribution to the world, silence manifests itself as a way of purifying our intentions. When we serve in silence, without seeking recognition or approval, our service becomes purer and more effective. This silence regarding our service does not mean that we should deny the value of our contribution. It is about understanding that true spiritual service is most powerful when carried out with humility and detachment from external recognition. In our practice of forgiveness and reconciliation, silence also proves to be a powerful facilitator. When we process our forgiveness experiences in silence, we create a sacred space where true healing can occur, free from outside interference. This silence regarding forgiveness processes does not mean that we should suppress or deny our feelings. It is about creating a sacred container where the energies of forgiveness can operate in a deeper and more transformative way. In the context of our practice of gratitude and celebration, silence manifests as a way to deepen our appreciation. When we cultivate gratitude in silence, our experience of abundance and blessing becomes deeper and more authentic. This silence regarding our gratitude does not mean that we should stop expressing appreciation. It is about developing a quality of gratitude that transcends the need for external expression, becoming a constant state of recognition of divine blessings. In our practice of discernment and decision-making, silence reveals itself as a source of clarity and wisdom. When we learn to consult the silence before making important decisions, our choices become more aligned with our higher purpose. This silence in the decision-making process does not mean indecision or passivity. It is about creating an inner space where we can clearly hear divine guidance, free from ego interference and external pressures. In the context of our practice of abundance and prosperity, silence manifests as a protector of our financial energy. When we maintain discretion over our finances and investments, we create an energetic field more conducive to the natural flow of abundance. This silence regarding our prosperity does not mean we should live in scarcity or deny our abundance. It's about understanding that true prosperity flourishes best when initially protected by silence, allowing the seeds of abundance to become firmly established. In our practice of healing and emotional transformation, silence also proves to be a powerful facilitator. When we process our emotions in silence, we create a sacred space where true transformation can occur. This silence in relation to our emotional processes does not mean repression or denial. It's about creating a sacred container where emotions can be transformed through the power of awareness and silent presence. In the context of our practice of developing gifts and talents, silence manifests as a protector of our creative potential. When we initially develop our skills in silence, we allow them to mature naturally, free from the pressure of external expectations. This silence regarding our gifts does not mean that we should hide our talents. It is about understanding that certain capabilities need a period of protected development before their full expression in the world. In our practice of connecting with nature and the elements, silence reveals itself as a bridge to natural wisdom. When we connect with nature in silence, our ability to receive its teachings and blessings expands significantly. This silence in communion with nature does not mean isolation from the natural world. It's about developing a quality of presence that allows us to tune in more deeply to the wisdom of the natural elements and cycles. In the context of our practice of energy protection and cleansing, silence manifests as a powerful tool. When we carry out our protective practices in silence, their effect becomes more powerful and lasting. This silence regarding our protective practices does not mean paranoia or fear. It is about understanding that certain spiritual practices are more effective when carried out with discretion and internal focus. In our practice of manifesting meaningful relationships, silence also proves to be an important catalyst. When we keep our desires and relational intentions silent, we create an energetic field more conducive to attracting truly aligned connections. This silence regarding our relational desires does not mean loneliness or isolation. It's about understanding that the most meaningful relationships often manifest when we are not actively seeking or announcing our seeking. In the context of our practice of developing intuition, silence manifests as a natural amplifier. The more we cultivate inner silence, the clearer and more reliable our intuition becomes. This silence in intuitive development does not mean disconnection from reality. It's about creating an inner space where the whispers of intuition can be heard clearly, without the interference of mental noise. In our practice of aligning with divine purpose, silence proves to be a reliable guide. When we learn to navigate our journey in silence, our connection to higher purpose naturally strengthens. This silence regarding our purpose does not mean passivity or lack of action. It is about developing a quality of presence that allows us to recognize and follow divine signs with more clarity and confidence. The power of silence ultimately lies not in the mere absence of sound or expression, but in the conscious presence it allows us to cultivate. It is through this presence that we become purer channels for the manifestation of the divine in our lives and in the world. The spiritual journey is, essentially, a journey of returning to the sacred silence of our essence. The deeper we go into this silence, the more naturally we manifest our true nature and divine purpose. This is the eternal invitation of the spiritual path, to delve into the transformative silence of our soul and allow it to guide us to our highest fulfillment.